You know, we've had a lot of great metroidvanias come out in the last 10 years. The Ori series, Hollow Knight, and the long-awaited Metroid Dread are probably the most standout games for fans of the genre, but there's been plenty of other good examples that may have flown under your radar. Released in early 2021, enderlilies Quietus of the Nights is a gorgeous hand-drawn metroidvania created by AdGlobe and Livewire. I saw its launch trailer back when it first came out, and given the fact that I have a weakness for anything hand-drawn, it grabbed me pretty much immediately. The game's environments had this depressing, ruined feel to them that reminded me a lot of the Soulsborne games, which is a massive plus for me since I have a semi-masochistic love for them. The thing that caught my attention the most, though, was its main character, Lily. Normally, for a game like this, you would be some kind of undead or mysterious warrior, but here our protagonist is a teeny and adorable child, who also has an entire platoon of stands. For Metroidvania standards, having a main character that can't really do much on her own and needs outside help is a pretty unique concept that left me pretty intrigued. So without further ado, it's time to have a look at the beautifully depressing world of enderlilies. Let's get started. Enderlilies takes place in Land's End, a once prosperous kingdom destroyed by the Reign of Death and its curse, the Blight, an infectious disease that warps the bodies and destroys the minds of those afflicted with it, while also granting them immortality as an undead monster. One day a little girl named Lily wakes up in a strange church with no memory of who she is, with the only lead being the umbral night spirit bound by a deathless pact to protect her. In truth, Lily is what's called a white priestess, a girl blessed with a natural resistance to the blight, and the ability to remove the blight afflicting others by taking on the burden herself, curing them of their curse. For the basic story setup, that's all you really get. The history of Land's End and the white priestesses are told through the game's many journal entries you can find and the memories of those Lily purifies. After leaving the White Parish, the world is yours to explore in all its depressing glory, and this is one of the rare times I actually have enough to say to warrant bringing up a game's presentation for more than just a passing comment, because enderlilies is gorgeous. The game does a perfect job of capturing the feel and atmosphere of any area you're in thanks to its wonderfully made music and visuals. The cliffside hamlet does a great job at showing the devastation of the Blight with its many ruined houses, the ever-present Reign of Death, and its sad-sounding music. Another area I really liked, the catacombs, actually caught me off guard a bit. Not for its many dead bodies, that just comes with the territory after all, but its music. Normally you would expect something that sounds a bit more creepy, but here the area is accompanied by soft-sounding piano, giving it more a feeling of despair than something unsettling. I'd love to go over my favorite area in the game, but unfortunately it's also the final area, so to avoid spoilers, I can't talk about it. But those watching this who've played the game before know exactly why it's so great. Assuming you share my opinion, of course. Everything about enderlilies looks and sounds great, but its actual exploration, though, isn't exactly perfect. It's not bad at all, but there's definitely a few things, or just one thing in particular really, that for good reason could easily frustrate some people. Enderlilies has a nice diversity of things to find in its world. There are, of course, items that permanently increase your max HP in the many amulet fragments, but also hidden are corpses that Lily can draw blight from for leveling up her spirits, and items called relics that can have a plethora of different passive and active effects. Every major boss will grant you new abilities to use for both combat and exploration, similarly to something like Bloodstained. Unlike Bloodstained, though, you can't swap your abilities anytime you want and can only change them when you're at a respite. This is where we get to one of my criticisms for enderlilies exploration. Usually it's not that big of a problem, since if you ever need a specific spirit setup for our particular item, there'll always be a place nearby to swap spirits around. It does make things a little bit frustrating at points, though. There were a couple of items that needed an optional spirit or two to grab that weren't immediately obvious. The worst and best example of them was this one in the catacombs. To get to the other side of this gap, you have to go down a room and make sure you have the Incompetent Sinner and Verdant Champion equipped so you can make it to this other wall and scale it. The problem is that it's not totally obvious you need these two specifically to get to this wall, so unless you have a guide or did some experimenting, it'll probably take some time for you to figure out exactly what the game's asking you to do. Everything I just mentioned was pretty minor in comparison to the game's biggest issue though, its map. Now, I'm not bothered by it on a personal level, but on a critical level, there are definitely a few issues here. While it will show you if you've gotten everything in a room or not, it's pretty vague on everything else. The map doesn't do a great job at conveying the scale of whatever room you're currently in, and making things worse, it also doesn't show you exactly where you are in the room. Frankly, I can easily see why people wouldn't exactly like this, but for me, it's not my biggest criticism with exploring. My largest criticism goes to one verdant domain. The one thing I'll give it is that on a presentation level, it's genuinely great. It has an ironically great atmosphere and it's got some nice music. But who on the dev team thought a poison area would be a great second to last place you go to? The fact that you need to wear the heretic's mask to have a chance at surviving the poison is bad enough, but combine that with how tanky the enemies are and this area's strange affinity for these giant masses of flesh and arms, and you have a recipe for crystallized frustration. Seriously though, what's with the lower part of the domain having like 20 of these things? In one room there's like 4 or 5 all on the same floor, and their tentacle attack, the one they like to spam, hits for like half of your health. This area is pretty much the one reason I refuse to 100% the game, because while it makes doing so easy normally, this one area is so irritating for me. I just can't bring myself to even try cleaning this place out. At the very least, I can say its boss is good, and actually on that note, let's talk combat and how the spirit system works, because this is my favorite part of enderlilies. With our main character being a small, frail child, she has the purified spirits of special people who were blighted to protect her. Initially, you only have the Umbral Knight to start with, but you can get up to 26 of them by the end of the game. My own setup focused on me being hyper-aggressive, and I found a really good team early on, so my strategy didn't change much, but with how unique each spirit is, you're bound to find tons of different ways to handle any enemy or boss. You can obtain new spirits by defeating special mini-bosses scattered throughout Land's End, and unlike the game's actual bosses, these aren't really hard at all. That's not a complaint, by the way. Honestly, I'm genuinely glad I don't have to spend at least half an hour on a mini-boss, cause some of the main guys gave me enough trouble as is. Now that's not to say I didn't like the boss fights at all. In fact, I really enjoyed all of them. It's just that their difficulty can range from, okay, that was a nice little challenge too. Alright, attempt number 30. I've mastered the first phase, let's see if I can get to phase 3 with at least 2 hits of healing left. Yeah, that's the other thing. Similarly to some other more challenging games, you have a set amount of healing that can be increased and upgraded by finding special relics and finding priestess wishes. You'll want to get these because some of the later enemies and boss fights hit very hard. Like, some attacks from basic enemies do a third or more of your health hard, cause Lily is about as fragile as you think she'd be. I think my favorite fight in the game has to go to Olv the Mad Knight. The arena is this beautiful field of red flowers at the top of the Twin Spires, and combining that with his gorgeous theme makes the fight very memorable for me. The actual fight itself threw me off for a bit due to how much faster and more aggressive he is compared to any fight previously, but learning to adjust to his speed and the timing for dodging his attacks was very satisfying. The hardest fight for me, as I sort of alluded to earlier, goes to Knight Captain Julius, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm pretty sure I did it to myself. Thanks to my hyper-aggressive playstyle and, well, my refusal to stop and really learn the timing for dodging his attacks or just straight up trying a different strategy altogether, this fight took me an hour. Unfortunately, this isn't the first time I would have done this, and even more so, the fact that I know it won't be the last, because I can be very, persistent in my ways, as I'll put it. Now, normally this would be the part where I start giving you a spoiler warning to talk about the story, but for once, I don't really think I need to. Enderlilies handles its story similarly to a Souls-like, so a lot of the reasons why things are happening are told in the notes you can find in the spirits you obtain. Because of that, I don't think I can really have a spoiler section for the game without this review becoming a lore video, so I guess we can just go ahead and wrap this up. Enderlilies is a pretty solid Metroidvania. Its hand-drawn world and its music is beautifully made. The game's spirit system gives exploration a very unique feel to it, and the customization that and the relics helps give a lot of strategy for combat and makes for some great boss fights. It's not perfect by any means, with things like its map and certain items being a little frustrating to obtain can make certain parts of Enderlilies a little annoying. It's still a good time though despite that, and if you're interested, I'd say give it a go. It might not amaze you like certain other Metroidvanias in recent years have, but at the very least you'll hopefully come out of it having really enjoyed what you played. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a nice day.